So anyway, our last guest is a longtime New York resident, a veteran journalist, and the author of The View from Apartment 4. I live in an apartment 2E, so I can tell you all about that view. Let's welcome Skip Rozin.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And this is a memoir of your life as a New Yorker. Tell us about that.
Didn't start off that way. The idea was that I had my apartment for 46 years. I lost the apartment. It was very traumatic.
How'd you lose it, Skip?
It was a rent-controlled apartment.
Okay.
I had it through the generosity of my landlord. Very few people talk about generosity of New York landlords. Mine let me stay there. He sold the building. New landlord was less generous, had a perfect right to throw me out, and did.
And where'd you end up going?
Cape Cod.
Okay.
A move by necessity. Our second child became triplets, and we had a space problem.
Oh, look right there. Wow.
Yeah, oh, wow. For those of us who don't live in your neighborhood, what does rent control mean?
Rent controlled is a law that was passed during World War II in New York and many other cities as well, so that to avoid rent gouging because there was such a shortage. And what it said was that the rent of an apartment is set by the government, by the state, and it cannot be jumped more than a certain percentage. By the time I moved to New York in '65, that was about 7.5% per year.
So tell us, why do you think people are leaving? Is it because of housing prices?
I was listening to what you were saying before. Yes, but I think it's an overall attitude that the city has changed, that this is, I think, less hospitable. I think expenses across the board are higher. If you look at the neighborhood, my neighborhood, the Upper West Side, which was very much family-oriented with shops and affordable apartments, and you go and see what's happened, the shops and bakeries and shoemakers, they're gone. And what you can do is you can buy cookies and ice cream at an exorbitant rate.
At 5 in the morning, or at 2 in the morning.
And that's one of the advantages of New York, and that's one of the charms of New York. I came in yesterday, took the train from Providence to Penn Station. I took the subway to the friend who is kind enough to be a host for me while I'm here. By the time I got to Tom's apartment near South Street, it was 8:30. I called the local Italian restaurant, ordered a dish, and by 9:30 I was having a wonderful fresh dinner. Can't do that in a lot of places.
Can't do that anywhere, really. I mean, the world is so convenient here. The lifestyle is very addictive here, really. I mean, I think Julia would agree with that.
Yeah, you get everything done in a day, if you want. I mean, I need 48 hours in a day, but, I get a lot of shit done.
And you also have the diversity.
Of course.
The wonderful thing about the Cape is it's safe, and it's a great place to raise kids, but it's relatively narrow, it's monochromatic.
Very monochromatic. I was just there. It's very waspy too.
Yeah.
It's like I was at a house that is owned by people who have been here since the Mayflower, and they still have it in the family. Like you could not make this stuff up, Skip.
It's absolutely true. And as attractive as that is, it's not real. And to raise kids in that environment, they could have an expectation. This is the world, and that's why we used to come back to New York as often as possible.
Now, Skip, you made a living as a writer. You came to New York City as a young writer, which is what a lot of people aspire to do. I'm sure New York City has changed a lot for writers, for anybody who's trying to start their career. What do you say to these people? Is New York City still a good place to start your career, or you would say, oh, go somewhere else?
I think it's still a good place. I think it's the economics that we were discussing that impact housing and changing of neighborhoods, I think also impacts the attitude of people in power and people who have access to publications. They're not as generous because money's tight. So I think it's more difficult than it used to be. It's still, however, a very good place because of the diversity of the community, the access to different publications. I think the overall perspective of journalism has changed, where I came out of being a newspaper reporter, a general assignment reporter, and that's what I aspired to be, a broad spectrum of stories in different areas. That's a harder thing to sell today. I would advise young writers to get a specialty, to become an expert in something. I was never an expert. Every story was a brand new field for me, and I had to hurry to catch up. It's harder to do today.
Yeah. Because of writing or being a writer is, I want to say it's a harder profession because, I mean, I rarely hear a, 22-year-old with a mega offer in New York City waiting for them. Usually they're like, oh, I'm going to count, I can afford to pay 4 months of rent, and then I'm going to go there, I'm going to go around, and then I'm going to go send my resumes around, and hopefully somebody gives me an internship, right? It's hard for these people.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and I do not advise anyone who wants to be rich to go into the writing field. I am delighted that none of my children are professional writers. They all have sought other fields and are doing very nicely. But it's a calling. If it's something, it was the first thing I ever attempted that I was any good at and that I enjoyed. And once you discover that combination, it's tough to walk away.
Well, Skip, thank you for letting us know how much New York has changed. You know, it still remains a great city, but
we haven't been here for that long, but
we're new New Yorkers,
we're new.
So we're new New Yorkers.
Well, you had the opportunity to explore what the city offers, and obviously you have a job, so that's a good thing. And my advice is to don't be limited by just Lincoln Center and the great things that there's music, there are all kinds of opportunities. There are people with different points of view, people who are comfortable sharing it, because in New York you can do that. And you can't do it every place in this country.
Very true.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Skip.
Yep.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right.
And thank you.
Thank you for watching. That's the end of our show today.
Thank you, Julia.
Oh, thank you. Good to see
It's
you.
always great seeing you. We're actually friends in real life, too. So anyway, so if you missed part of this week's episode, you can catch up on all of our latest on Bold TV's Amazon Fire TV channel. Sound like a robot saying that. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.